B-A-T. It's in the name.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis. Joining us on today's episode is Kim Chandler. Kim is the elementary principal at Mars Hill Bible School. Kim is a 4-year survivor of breast cancer, and today's discussion is about her journey. We will get right to the interview after these messages.
This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you by the 3rd annual Bella's Snowball 5K and 1 Mile Fun Run on Saturday, November 12th at 8 a.m. during the Host of Christmas Past weekend in Fayetteville, Tennessee. November is National Adoption Awareness Month, and proceeds from this race will help Luke and Heidi Eakes with their adoption travel expenses and support the mission of Always Endure. This event is fun for the whole family. Meeting Queen Elsa, face painting, bubble zone, and candy are just a few things to look forward to. We want to see everyone dressed up. Ruffled shirt, tutu, tights, something with a little Christmas flair. What will you wear to the ball? To register, go to alwaysendure.com and click the Events tab. Thank you for helping to remove a financial barrier so a child can gain their forever home.
I'm Travis Creasy, and that's All-Pro Counselor Ben Hayes.
Howdy. My hand can't be seen off camera. There we go.
And our wonderful technician, the man who keeps this thing going from a technological standpoint, Will Mahan.
Hey, everybody.
And as promised, we have with us our guest today, Mrs. Kim Chandler, who is one of my many bosses in this world. She is the principal at Mars Hill Bible School Elementary, and we're sitting in her office right now. She is helping us out today by being on the podcast with us, and we're really excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Well, it is going to be a good day. So, I don't know exactly how many years you've been working here at Mars Hill. I know you were working as a high school teacher for a little while. Is that when you taught Will?
Middle school
with Will. So,
Oh, wow.
So good. We might have some questions for you. So you taught high school, you taught middle school, and you've been the elementary principal for how many years now?
This is year 7.
Wow,
Yeah.
year 7. So I think you started down here the same year I started down here, I believe, because I think they told me to start, and then the principal was like, "No, I'm not dealing with him," and she left, and you were here. So
stuck me with you.
So
yes.
Here we are. So we've been down here, and it's hard to believe we've been down here for 7 years now.
It really
so
is.
It's really awesome. But we're glad that you joined us and that you are here with us. And I've got the Friday Refresh question of the day. That's what we usually start with. If you have not got the opportunity to check out Friday Refresh, it comes out every other Friday. This Friday is going to be one of those Fridays. And we would love for you to come check that podcast out with us. It's just a 3 to 5 minute thing, and you can go to benandtravis.com to find that. So the question of the day is, being an awesome cancer survivor, as we have already mentioned, what are the circumstances that were surrounding your diagnosis with breast cancer, I believe?
Okay, so because I did not have a family history of breast cancer,
okay,
but I had a family history of fibrocystic breast. So because of that, at a very early age, I started having mammograms on a regular basis. And I would always get called back. They would always see something. They would always call me back, but it was always okay in the end. And in 2018, toward the end of the year, I got called back again. And then I got called back again after my callback. And I knew at that point that they saw something that bothered them that I needed to be concerned about. So it was the 3D mammography machine had just moved into my doctor's office, and I'm so thankful for that. That's what caught it. It caught it early. So on New Year's Eve, 2018, while most people were, getting ready to go celebrate and have a little bit of fun, I received a phone call from the nurse in my doctor's office who said, "Hey, Kim, Dr. Wakefield's going to stay just a little bit longer today. Can you come in? And do you want to call Kevin to come with you?" And so I knew at that moment that I was going to get some news that no one ever wants to hear. So that was the beginning of my journey.
Wow. So that was a pretty, I guess, anxious and stressful time when you start getting those phone calls.
Yes.
I know Travis has talked about his journey, and his was kind of like show up at the doctor's office and you're right into the hospital. There was no anxious moments in between. I mean, there were, but it was very quickly. So I assume that there's a lot of buildup during those moments where you're, waiting on those phone calls.
Yes, the waiting on the phone calls, the initial diagnosis, to me was the worst. After the diagnosis, well, sitting in that doctor's office with the most precious doctor, and he was so kind and so sweet. And I've said this to so many people, God took over my life at that point. I mean, he was in control of my life always, but at that moment, it was like he just wrapped himself around me. It was just like this fog. I've talked about the fog. Just this fog came down between me and everyone else. And I could see Kevin and the doctor. I could hear them, but it sounded like they were so far away from me. And he's telling me, Kim, this is what I see. I think everything's going to be okay. This is what I would recommend. And he's telling me then the course of action. We need to get you in with a surgeon and all of the things he's telling me. You have to have a wonderful support system.
Oh, yeah.
You have to, because there are so many things that I don't truly remember. If it hadn't been for Kevin and for my kids, I don't know how I would have gotten through it like I did, because they were always there with me. They were always listening. They always, they had my back. They knew what I needed to do. And they were always reminding me, hey, you remember, you're supposed to be doing this. The doctor said to do this, So you have to have that support system, because I feel like for the first 3 years, I'm on year 4, the first 3 years I walked through that fog. And at some point, when year 4 rolled around, it's like that lifted, and I felt like me again.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful feeling.
I can imagine that's hard. I mean, I've been in those doctor's appointments with Dad and others that, they're given so much information. It's good to have other ears in the room with you, because it's hard to remember all that.
Absolutely.
Ms. Chandler, you talk about your diagnosis, and then usually what comes after that, of course, a lot of people is treatments. And
Yes.
so can you talk to us a little bit about like what treatment she went through, and
Yes.
even through those treatments, how people supported you?
Okay. Yes. So that was a whirlwind, and it happened so quickly. From that New Year's Eve until January the 9th was my surgery date. I guess the diagnosis I received, while scary, was also pretty much best case scenario. I was able to get in with Dr. Stevens, and he is no longer in our area, but he was the most amazing surgeon. And from the moment I met with him, he explained everything. Of course, Kevin's sitting right there, so he can remind me of all of that later on. And I asked him, I said, just speak to me like I am sitting here in this room and you are talking to your mother. What would you recommend to your mother? And his recommendation was a lumpectomy, followed by radiation. No chemotherapy seemed to be needed at the time, and then a 5-year period of tamoxifen. My cancer stage was a 1B, and so it was about the size of a pea, is what I'm told. And we did catch it early, thankfully, to that 3D mammography machine. So if anybody out there listening has a choice, that's what you want. You want to go with a doctor who can offer that. That's wonderful. And the day of my surgery, which happened on January 9th, 2019, I was more than a little nervous, to say the least. But I had an amazing support system. Kevin and my kids. Ben came down to the hospital waiting room that morning. Josh Webster was there, my parents, Kevin's mom. So many people were there. And as nervous as I was, there was a time where I felt an amazing calm come over me. And I was told later, how many people were praying for me, and that they were praying here at school, and they were praying in that waiting room. And so I have no doubt that's what that calm was that came over me at that time. And I'm so thankful for all of that. My surgeon prayed for me. He came in the area where they were getting me ready, and he had a prayer with me before the surgery. There's somewhere in all of that, there's an amazing doctor that I had contact with that day who was putting the wire in to guide the surgeon. I have no idea who he is. I do not know what his name is, but he looked at me and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he knew me through friends at Mars Hill. Okay. And he said, Kim, you're going to be okay. And that's exactly what I needed to hear at that moment. And so that was amazing. God just put so many people in my path from the time that I got that diagnosis. Still today, he's still putting people there that have just said the right thing at the right time to me and have really helped me throughout. My cancer was estrogen fueled, so it was, hormonal, and therefore that's the tamoxifen for 5 years, and I'm on year 4 of that. So hopefully one more year, and I get to come off of all of that.
That's all. There's got to be a calming to have a doctor come in and pray with you.
Oh, it was amazing.
We talk about techniques and practices, and we like to be practical. Were there anything, I know that you talked about your support system, which is amazing. Was there anything that you maybe post operation or techniques that you use to kind of help you de-stress or calm down or relax a little bit?
There was a very sweet mom here at school that gifted me a set of what looked like business cards, and on each one of them was a different scripture. And it was they were just for me, that each one had my name.
That's awesome.
In the scripture. And that was so amazing, and it was so sweet, and it just really helped me. That's the way I would start my day. And people may think I'm crazy. Work helped me. So, I was in the doctor's office telling them I can go back to work before they intended for me to come back to work. So I promised Dr. Wakefield, I said, I promise you, I will go to my office and I will sit there. I will not do anything that I'm not supposed to do if I can just go to work and be around people, because this is the most amazing place to work ever. I have the best people. They were and they still are, an amazing support to me. I walked in this morning and my door is decorated in breast cancer ribbons, and there was a gift for me there. They're just amazing. They seem to know what I need sometimes before I do. And let me not forget the kids that I work with. God knew where I needed to be and when I needed to be here. Ben alluded earlier to my time at Mars Hill. So this is year 25 for me at Mars Hill. And I've done it all, almost. So the first couple of years I was part-time. I taught in the preschool. Mm-hmm. I took a leave of absence for a teacher who had cancer, and worked for her. And then I finally got hired on full time. I have taught middle school. I've taught elementary. I recertified. I taught high school for a time period and absolutely loved it. And I've been the cheer sponsor for many years. I was the cheer sponsor. And then 7 years ago, once again, I recertified and I came back to the elementary as the elementary principal, and I'm loving it. I'm loving life down here. It's amazing. The kids, they keep me young. They help me smile. I always have a great day at work, no matter what.
Surely in one of these blowout wins by Mars Hill football, they'd let you call a play, right?
I don't know why they haven't.
I had offensive coordinator to, that list, our defensive coordinator for that matter.
Oh.
We need to do that.
Oh.
What else?
So I've also coached basketball before. Oh,
wow.
2 times. And I'm 50-50. So I'm,
what is that
500?
Here at Mars Hill?
Well,
that's a big status thing if you've coached basketball at Mars Hill.
Yes, and it was when basketball was king here at Mars Hill. So as the cheer sponsor, lots of times, other than the basketball coach, I would be the only school official at some of these junior high games or whatever. So if the coach ever got ejected, guess who they called down from the stands?
That's awesome.
Me. Won one, lost one.
That's awesome. God put you here with these little kids at the right time. And I know, it's always fun. I like doing Carline in the morning because they get out. And there's some of them that get out with tears, but a lot of them get out with smiles, and they're excited to see their friends and high fives and hugs. And I'm sure that was a big help to you during that time.
As funny as it sounds,
yeah,
Carline is one of my favorite times of the day. And I do it twice. It's the Ben and Kim show in the morning. We get them out, and then I join in with the teachers in the afternoon of putting them in the cars to go home. Lunchroom, I do lunchroom duty every day. It's crazy, but I love it. I mean,
it's the interaction.
Yeah, it's the interaction with the kids, and it's the stories they tell you. They raise their hand and they don't really need anything except that they have something they want to tell you. And it's wonderful. The hugs up and down the hallway, they will stop the whole class line to give you a hug.
Well, if you ever need somebody to be honest with you.
Oh, yes.
Elementary school kids will tell you like it is.
Yes, they will.
And anything that's happened at their house this weekend.
Yeah.
Yes.
You never know what's going to happen. Another question for you is, what are some do's and don'ts that you might share with listeners about caring for somebody who has breast cancer?
I think the best advice I can give is just to be there and to listen. One of the hardest things I think we do in our society is listen. Listen to hear. Many times people are always listening to comment, so they're not really listening. All I needed was love and support. I just needed to know that I had people that I could go to and I could talk to about whatever I needed to say. And there's no judgment, and they're going to listen to me. And they're not going to come back at me with, well, this person had this happen, because every breast cancer and probably cancer story, every treatment, it's different. No one is this. You could line up 50 people in here this morning who've had breast cancer, and it would be rare if any of us had the same journey through. So I think just be there and just listen, and just whatever that person needs at the time. They're gonna need help with meals. They're going to need help with their house and laundry, and and kids if they've got little kids. My children were of course older, and Blake was able to take a leave from the Army and be home during that first week or so with me, and Morgan was able to be with me and go to things with me that I needed, and Kevin went to everything. Kevin went. Well, I say everything. He missed 2 visits at the doctor with me, and I'm still a little upset with him about that. I thought it would be okay, and he really had something important going on at work those times, and both times I just fell apart, but just knowing he was sitting in the waiting room, he couldn't come back with me, but just knowing he was sitting in the waiting room out there and I could see him when I walked out was what I needed.
It's awesome. It's funny you mentioned that, because I think Whitney my wife missed 1 or 2, and every one of them was something with like, hey, your liver's enzymes are a little this, and once again, I can't remember details. I think the second time she missed, I took my phone and just recorded what the doctor said. And I'm starting to realize that may be why Job is the oldest book in the Bible, because that's basically the theme is just be present. You don't have to fix it with words. In fact, it's usually the opposite.
So Travis, I have failed to mention this, but you and Miss Chandler have a connection long before I started working at Mars Hill. Do you happen to remember what that connection is?
I don't remember, no.
Oh, I do.
Do you remember?
I remember.
So
I'm so sorry.
This can only be bad. It can only
It is Miss Chandler's son, Blake, that broke your rib at CYC in the very first video that we made at CYC when you got form tackled
Yeah.
by her son.
You got a good technique, and my kids love that at school. They love watching that video. It's probably the most watched video, repeated. My football players, like, they probably love it. But you're great. Yeah, you could use it as a technique.
I taught him everything he knows.
With the kids, you're always talking about your favorite thing on the earth to do is read. It seems like that's what you say in chapel a lot.
Mhm.
So, with that being the case, what would be your favorite book you've ever read?
Mhm.
What's maybe the most inspirational book you've ever read? Is there and those may be the same and they may not be.
Oh, they're definitely not the same.
Okay, all right.
I cannot pinpoint one book. It's a series of books.
Okay.
All right. And I'm a huge Harry Potter fan.
Okay.
And so that whole series of books, when it came out, look, I did not want to read those books. I'm like, no, that I'm not going to be interested in any of that. That's not real, no. And Blake was in middle school. Morgan was in elementary school at the time. And he started reading the series. And I forget, it was about book 4, maybe, before I thought, you know what, I need to read these books and see what they're all about, because he is all into them. And Morgan has started wanting to read them, And he looked at me and he said, you got to go back and start all the way with the first one. Before you can't just jump in right here. And so I did. I went back and I just devoured those books, just one right after the other. And it got to a point in our house where, you had to pre-order those books to get them in a timely manner. And so the three of us would fight over them. When it was delivered to the door, the next one coming out, we would fight over it. But I think the fact that that's something that we all enjoyed reading. And so, we all had that in common together, but there's just something about those books. I'm not really sure what it was.
Did the movies do it justice?
Yes, I love the movies.
Okay,
I watch reruns of those all the time. Kevin will walk in the room and just shake his head.
My kids do
She's
too.
watching those again. Inspirational book. I'm not 100% sure the exact title of this book or the author's name, but I went back in my phone while he gave me just a moment. But there's a book called I've Been Thinking, and there are a lot of devotionals in that book. And I have like 3 snapshots of that book, of pages from that book, and they're all leading up to the days of my surgery. It's like starting on January 6th. It's things that I read leading up to that. And it's a book that I've had for a very long time. I don't know where I got the book. I feel like somebody gave it to me. I'm not really 100% sure. But I started reading it again during that time, and it was just speaking to me. And so I was making snapshots of those pages leading up to my surgery. So
probably a good point. A lot of the most inspirational things that we've ever read, we read them during the times that we needed them the most.
Absolutely.
So that's a good
I don't know that there's more terrifying words that my wife can say than I've been thinking. Because usually after that, I'm going to be motivated. No doubt, I'll be motivated. But I like brace myself. I've been thinking.
It's going to go downhill from there.
Yes, I just said those words yesterday morning on the way to church. I said, "Hey, Kevin, I've been thinking." He went, "Oh no."
We just want to remind all of our listeners to be sure and hit that subscribe button. Also share this. We want as many people to hear this wonderful message, Ms. Chandler, that you've given to us. But as we kind of wrap things up, could you just let us know some things that we need to know about breast cancer, and maybe some statistics, things that you can share with us?
Absolutely. So growing up, I had this horrible fear of that word cancer. And until I received my diagnosis, I don't think I knew but one person who had ever been diagnosed with breast cancer. And, we've come a really long way. So I feel like, that fear, well, I know the fear that was in me, it came from hearing my grandparents talk about, cancer. And I could tell that they had a fear of it, the fear of the unknown. But no one in my family had ever dealt with anything like this before. So I was under this very bad delusion, I guess, that I would never get breast cancer. I didn't have to worry about that. I said earlier, I had a history of the fibrocystic breast, but that was always something that was, benign, could be drained, it was always fine. That came from one of my grandmothers. But I just thought, I don't have a breast cancer history in my family. Therefore, I don't have to worry about that. Well, surprise, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So 1 in 8 women in our lifetime will be diagnosed with breast cancer. And I didn't know that until after I got my diagnosis. And that was very eye-opening. Only 5 to 10% of those diagnosed have a family history of breast cancer. So you have a bigger percentage out there who are diagnosed with no family history. One of the myths about breast cancer is, it's older women. And while the percentage is higher in those 50 and above, I wrote down this morning that 1 in 25 are under 40 when they're diagnosed. So yes, everybody out there that you care about, that you love yourself, make sure you have a doctor that you trust and that you can talk to, and get those yearly mammograms when the time comes for you to get it. They like to have you get like a baseline mammogram 5 years out from the time that you need to start getting those as a woman. But, go ahead and get those. Men get breast cancer. It's not as common. I think it's like 1 in 833, something like that, but they can get that. I have some other myths here that are common things that I always heard, and this is coming from the breast cancer organization online. But it says the myth is, if you maintain a healthy weight, exercise regularly, eat healthy, limit alcohol, you don't have to worry about breast cancer. Well, I pretty much fit all of those. I exercised. I tried to eat healthy. I didn't drink. My weight was a healthy weight, and yet I was diagnosed. Then there's some out there that just are like off the wall. Like, where did that come from? There's a myth out there that says wearing a bra can cause breast cancer. Well, there's not any evidence to support that. There's a myth out there that says deodorant can cause it. And I think there's some things in deodorant that, but there's really no evidence to back up. And I hate to even say this one. There's a myth that says, a lot of women will keep their cell phone, close to their body in places. But there's really no evidence that says that, that cell phones cause breast cancer if they're too close to your body. But still, I wouldn't want to keep it close to my body. So, don't do that.
Just in case.
Yeah. There's a myth that says consuming too much sugar can cause breast cancer. There's nothing really to back that up as well. Annual mammograms guarantee that breast cancer will be found early. That's not true. There are ladies out there with dense breast tissue, ladies out there like me with fibrocystic breast, and those kinds of things will hide breast cancer. So you have to be extra cautious, with those things. There's a myth that says early stage breast cancers rarely occur. Mine was early stage. So, that obviously, was not true for me. All breast cancer is treated pretty much the same way. I touched on that a little bit ago. It's not. We all have a different story. We all choose a different path. I had a choice in my treatment. And I'll finish with this one. When treatment is over, you're finished with breast cancer. That's a myth. My treatment ended. I rang the bell in March of 2019 with my last radiation treatment, but I've got 5 years of medicine to go. But even after that, because everybody's treatment is different, it affects you differently. It can affect you mentally. It can affect you physically. I still, from time to time, have this onset of this. I am exhausted. I cannot go one more minute. I have got to get some rest. This fatigue that I feel, it will manifest itself in many different ways in everybody. So just be aware that just because, hey, treatment's over, you're good. That's not always the end of it for everybody.
We thank you very much for sharing all those stats. It's always good to get that information out there, dispelling myths and things of that nature. So thank you for joining us.
It is very important, and I appreciate you guys so much for bringing some attention to this.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.